Yeah. Shh.
Okay, we're live. Okay, so let me get the intro music and then we'll go. Welcome to the Iron Sysadmin podcast, your source for IT news, commentary, and a healthy dose of paranoia. Hey, folks, and welcome to Iron Sysadmin episode 30. Tonight, we've got a little bit something special. As usual, we have Jason with us. Dustin couldn't join us. And we have a special guest, Mr. Dave Kennedy.
Hey there.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, cool. So I happened to take a little jab at Dave at one point because he was on the Danny's podcast. I don't forget Rally Security. Just that if Rally was able to get Dave, why couldn't we get Dave? And then Dave called me out on it and said, "Yeah, sure, I'll be on your show."
So here
he is.
We just figured out different scheduling times of when we can do it, and it worked out well.
Yeah, right. It's been like a month, I guess, at this point, of trying to find when we could get this done.
Yeah.
You can blame Thanksgiving, I suppose.
Well, for consultants like myself, the Q4 is when everybody wants to spend their money, and so everybody is completely booked, and I'm traveling like a madman, and all that good stuff. So it's also busy for me too.
Well, that's important stuff. Important stuff.
That's the Q4 is when everybody goes, "Oh crap, we were supposed to do that thing."
Right. Yeah. We got to get it done by the end of the year, or else we lose our money, or we have to have compliance issues, with if we don't get our pen test done or whatever we're doing. So it ends up being a huge, hey, we need to get this done by in a week, and you have, a week to do this all, and they're like, I don't know if we can do it or not, but try to figure it out.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so get one done in Q4, and then quickly get one done in Q1, and then you can be on the right cycle.
Exactly.
There you go.
We prefer that. So we're not going crazy, but Q4 for consultants is usually the busiest time of the year. So
I'll remember that if we're ever going to hire Trusted Sec. Go for Q2.
Q2, Q3 is perfect. That's fine.
Remember, Nate, in your industry, Q4 is in the middle of the year. So
good point. Good point. Fiscal year, anyway.
Sounds good to me.
That would work perfect. All right. So for those of us, or I should say those listeners of ours who don't know who Dave is, well, I mean, we've chatted about DerbyCon in the past. Dave is one of the brains behind DerbyCon. So that's we're very grateful for that. That's an awesome conference, and
I love it.
We thank you for that. He also runs two companies, Trusted Sec and Binary Defense. You want to chat a little bit about what you do with each of those two arms?
Yeah, Trusted Sec is an information security consulting company. So we do everything from like penetration testing to red team assessments, source code analysis, web application, assessments, compliance stuff, around PCI and, risk assessments and things like that. So we're a full-fledged consulting shop around doing those. But everything from breaking in physically to, hacking through websites and phishing people, all that good stuff. It's kind of our bread and butter there. And then Binary Defense is a 24-hour, 7 days a week, 365 day a year monitoring detection company. So we look for hackers breaking in to systems, and we also have a piece of software that goes on called Vision that looks for hackers and indicators and things like that to help identify and respond quicker to threats. So both companies located in Cleveland, Ohio, but we have folks all over the country. So it's been awesome.
Cool. So I've seen a number of tweets and whatnot come from you and your various staff, or at least people I've deduced seem to work for you.
Yeah.
It looks like a pretty fun office culture you have going there. So
yeah, for me, the office culture is the most important piece. People are the most important piece for me. We've been able to attract some awesome talent because of the culture that we have at the company. It's about taking care of people first, no matter what. And that is bred through our entire culture, entire company. At the office, obviously we have things like Xboxes and arcade games and food and drinks all taken care of. And whenever I'm there, I always buy lunch for everybody. But we have Nerf guns and have fun. And, it's a work hard, play hard mentality. But it's very much, a culture where we all joke around and have fun. Like, I think, Kim, who runs our HR piece of it, she sent an email today asking for health benefits, and someone responded all. So then everybody started responding all. So by the end of the day, you have like 300 emails of just, nonsense and, hey, are we supposed to respond to all? And then there's memes that start going on, and it starts a whole meme war, and then that goes into a whole another meme war. So, and then you're fighting memes and memes, and then it's a fun place. We like having fun, and if you're not laughing that day, then something's wrong. So.
So very, very important question. What is the maximum velocity you've gotten your Nerf gun to go at this point?
Well, is the new one, the red one, that actually has like the yellow perforated circles. It actually does like the high velocity ones. Those are great, and they're intimidating because they sound so loud coming out, but they don't hurt. But I mean, it's pretty substantial. So we've definitely fired those. I have a couple automatic ones. A couple of the guys prefer like. What's that?
Are you saying you haven't modified one of these?
Well, so you can hook up more batteries to the. So we have one where you can hook up like extra batteries to it. It makes it shoot like rapidly faster, which has been great. The ones that are the ball ones, I think you can modify those, but we haven't done those yet. So no, we haven't done those. Yeah,
those sounds awesome. Sounds awesome.
Need a soldering station with all the bits and pieces.
Every successful company I've ever seen that has happy employees has a similar culture to that, and it's awesome to hear. Yeah. I do have to ask though, how was the one chip challenge?
Not good. That was so the one chip challenge, for those that don't know, is like they're Carolina Reapers. And the Reapers are the hottest peppers, are hotter than Jalopy ghost peppers and all that other stuff. And basically they have these chips you can buy. And they're like $5 for one chip, and I bought 5 of them. Okay, and so we had Friendsgiving at our office, where we all get together, share food and everybody cooks and stuff like that, and we go around what we're thankful for and all that good stuff, and so I started roping people in, and Paul Koblitz, one of our physical security folks and social engineering guys, he is immune to hot stuff. Like literally, the guy can eat whatever hot stuff he wants to, and he'll have the same exact reaction as if he wasn't eating hot stuff. It's just. No effect. So he was in, of course.
He's gifted.
Yeah. So Paul, to explain Paul, I remember we used to live in the same. This is actually how I hired Paul. So Paul and I were friends, and we lived in the same development together in Ohio. And I remember driving by Paul's house one day, and I see Paul outside because we get a lot of snow here, and he's in flip flops, a tank top, and shorts, and he's snow plowing, and it's like -5 degrees outside. And there's steam coming from his head. He's sweating outside in this -5 degree weather. The guy's a amazing heater, and just stuff doesn't bother him in that sense. So we had him. We had Alex Hammerstone, who's in our GRC side. Ryan, one of our sales folks, and myself do the chip challenge. And I'll be honest, man, I can handle hot stuff, but that was legit heat. I was in pain. Like if you look at the video, I'm rocking like this.
Yeah.
Because it's so painful. Like I can't.
It did not look enjoyable at all.
No. I won't be doing that again.
But I guess if you're not trying things, you're not living, right?
Right, exactly, right? And try it once and learn never to do that again. The worst part was, the pain there, and then like a half hour later, I got this ball of pain in the center of my stomach, and it would just sit there, and it sat there for like a half hour. I'm just sitting there, just like, yeah. And then it went away, and I didn't have any after effects after, as you would expect. Like you'd expect, hey, I'd be hugging the toilet and a bunch of other stuff. I was fine, no problem.
Hey, can't complain, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm glad I lived.
Yeah, he hasn't had any X-rays since then, and doesn't realize there's a big hole in his chest.
Yeah, right. The reason that it went away is because the stomach is gone.
That's right. It's gone. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I've been losing weight. I just can't keep food in.
All right, so that's a little bit about Dave. So the reason we figured we'd bring you on the show tonight is we're sort of a security focused sysadmin or operations podcast, right? So a lot of ops focused folks really don't care much about security, and they just depend on those security guys, and there's generally some tension there and whatnot. Yeah. Jason and I have both for a long time been involved in either small groups that don't have a dedicated security team, or we've just, I guess cared enough that we rope security. And so we figured we'd chat a little bit about, working with small teams and trying to rope security into operations and, things like that. I'm sure some people can relate to that. So even security podcasts that I hear, usually there's these dedicated security folks. When you're on a smaller team, you don't necessarily get that. So, like I said, things like DerbyCon, that's the whole reason that I've been going. We started, Jason and I went the first year that it was around 2011, right?
That's awesome. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and I've only missed one because my dad decided to get married the weekend of DerbyCon.
You didn't skip the wedding? I'm seriously kind of.
I was the best man.
I know, right? I said the same thing. I'm like,
I mean, I could have like me and your dad's wedding.
We could have had the wedding at DerbyCon.
There you go.
Yeah, I had a ticket. I had a way there. Had a place to sleep, and couldn't go. It was also the year you had Crystal Method there the first time. I was really bummed.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah,
well, thankfully you brought them back.
On the plus side, we added one to our team that goes down that year, and then I think we've vetted two more at this point. So there's like 5 of us now that go down.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
In a small rental car for 13 hours.
Yeah. So Jason's been to all of them. I've been to I guess 6 out of 7 now. It's 7 total. Yeah, I'm losing track now.
Well, I appreciate you guys going. I mean, obviously that's near and dear to my heart. And so it's always good that it's the people that make the conference too. So, I mean,
right.
Predominantly the people that make the conference. 99% we just facilitate it. So
I've met some pretty interesting people at DerbyCon.
I think I'm also 7 for 7 on hugs as well. So
hey, there you go. Every year,
you go. See that?
I remember as soon as I saw the screen pop up, I'm like, I remember hugging.
I remember that guy, huh?
Remember hugging?
I'm loud.
Yeah, so you were probably in a dazed rush at this point, but you might remember me and Dustin's not on the show, but he's normally on the show. We were part of the Hack Your Derby contest this year.
Yes. So for all the people that did the Hack Your Derby, I know I've gotten emails from all of you. You get a free ticket for next year for the winning of that. So I'll be sending those out soon. Yeah,
that's good to know. Since I know you're so busy, I wasn't sure if my email got missed.
No, yeah. So what happens?
Confirmed happily.
What happens is like leading up to DerbyCon, it takes everything out of us to get it going, right? I mean, you're hitting everything you possibly can, and then when it ends, you don't want to think about anything DerbyCon related for like at least like a few months, just to kind of like relax for a little bit and then start it back up again. So
yeah, I can understand that, at least at a smaller scale. I haven't touched the Derby project, which definitely needs some work before next year. Since I got home from DerbyCon, I just turned it off, put it on my desk, and said, "I'll deal with you in months."
Exactly. Now, those Hack Derbys are awesome. Like this year was amazing to even be a part of that. So that was cool. Yeah. The guy with Zelda. I mean that. Oh, then you could play with a controller. That was pretty awesome. It was a little derby. That was amazing. Yeah. That was pretty cool. And that's like one of my favorite songs. Like if you text message me, my text message is the powering up on Zelda. So I mean, it's Oh, perfect. Yeah. Maybe he knew that, and that's why he made that derby. Totally. He won me over. So yeah. So yeah, I mean that's the reason behind why we go to DerbyCon. It's mainly to keep us apprised of what's going on. A, from penetration testers, B, from bad guys. I know there's not a lot of bad guys at DerbyCon, at least not that we know of. Right. But it's basically to keep us in the loop, right? So I was kind of curious on basically your I don't know, vision as to whether that's what DerbyCon is for or not. It seems to have been serving us pretty well, but are you more red team focused, or do you try to keep it balanced, or is it just sort of whoever comes? Balanced. Balance is important, like having enough for the red team and also having enough for the blue team, and having a combination of both. Like really what my goal with DerbyCon is to bring together folks like yourselves that may not be fully dedicated in security all the time, or the listeners of the show, or people that are security driven, that are focused on the red team side to understand blue, and vice versa. We had a huge gap. You look at 5 or 10 years ago, what was happening is, folks like myself, and I was, naive and allowed this too, is I'd go in and I would just break into every company I possibly could and hand them a report, and I'd walk off and I'd break into a whole bunch of other companies, and folks didn't know what to do with those reports and how to fix them and how to get better at security. And that's really where DerbyCon came into. It was kind of like trying to bridge that gap of understanding, like, hey, these are things that we can do and implement to hopefully secure us better. And so we have a good balance of those. We have a balance of forensics, with red and blue. Purple teaming is a big concept you see there. It's really designed to help defenders get better at defending, because that's really what we're here for. It's not to break everything and, show how cool we are breaking stuff. It's really to make the world a better place. And that's really what we want to get out of it. And so for me personally, I'm focused on both sides. I spend half my time on the red. I spend half my time on the blue. And that makes me stronger in both areas.
Right.
And red and blue, by the way, red is offense, blue is defense.
Right. Yeah. Right. So for folks that are primarily operations or blue team focused, that are on sort of a smaller staff that don't have dedicated security folks, do you have any recommendations on how they may be better on both sides of the house? Maybe operations isn't necessarily your thing, but how might you blend those roles so that a good sysadmin can also keep an eye on security and make his systems better?
I think if you look at what your roles are from a sysadmin's perspective, is to make sure that the system's running, that you can focus on what the organization needs in order to grow, and part of that is understanding security. To me, part of your job responsibilities is really trying to secure that infrastructure as well. And what comes out of that is not just a system that comes out of there. It's a better product. The machine's locked down. You have the ability to do things differently, to lock it down to where only what it needs to. It helps protect it. So I think from a sysadmin role, it's really having that blended piece around it. I think it makes you stronger, both marketability wise. Going into a company, security is definitely something that is on everybody's mind, especially if you start going to larger organizations where you may have more dedicated folks. Having an understanding around security is a marketable position. And on top of it, so I came from a Fortune 1000 company. The thing that I worked on most with the sysadmins there and the server infrastructure team and everybody else was helping them understand security and working with them to understand how to make things better. Because at the end of the day, the product of what you build and what you're there to do becomes better. So I don't think you can have just a sysadmin anymore that doesn't have responsibilities around security. It's everybody's responsibility. It's not just a security person's responsibility to find the holes. It's everybody to figure out ways to make it better and to make the infrastructure more resilient. I mean, it's the same thing that a sysadmin has to deal with from a availability perspective. I mean, you have to keep the systems up and running if the business shuts down. You have to do the same thing for the system itself. Make sure they don't get hacked. Make sure that you are applying best practices and principles. That's being proficient at your job. And I think security is definitely a component of that. And if you're doing technology, security is just a byproduct of that as well.
So you're saying that everybody should go right out and get their CISSPs, right?
Well, I mean, see, I'm on the board of directors for ISC Squared, so so I actually have a CISP, and all that good stuff. So, a CISP is considered a cert that's a mile wide and an inch deep. From a security standpoint, I think if from a security perspective, I would say try to get your company to recognize why security is important and go to some security training classes. Things like SANS is a fantastic thing. Going to DerbyCon to learn. There's the offensive security courses out there, offensive security certified professional, which is a really good course, learning how attackers operate and what you can do to better defend it. There's some great stuff out there for people to learn.
So from I guess an internal penetration testing perspective, do sysadmins make good good folks to perform that, or do they know too much about the infrastructure and it's really not a fair battle?
I'll tell you, some of the strongest pen testers I've ever met in my life are sysadmins. Pen testers, we talk about, the attackers that go into infrastructure and identify, exposures. Some of those folks are definitely sysadmins. Some of the strongest pen testers I've known. And I have a lot of them on my team that, came from former sysadmin backgrounds that, having an understanding around how systems are built and how people build things is a very interesting trait. Because you can then take that and reverse it and say, okay, well, I know how they built this and I would build it this way. Let's try to hack it this way. So I think that, having that skill is important. Now, if you're talking, more somebody that's in the inside, I'm more of a fan of the more knowledge, when you go and attack, the better, because, in a lot of cases, an attacker is only going to have maybe, or a pen tester is only going to have like a week or 2 weeks to go and do the engagement. And you're supposed to find as much as you possibly can at time frame, whereas an attacker is going to have a much larger period of time. So I think having more information about things is better. So having, an internal sysadmin go and do it is great. The only thing I would say is that it removes a lot of things that you'd probably check. You may be comfortable thinking that it's configured this way when it's really not, and not go and check it based on your familiarity with the environment. So having somebody come in and, or having a team that is there, or having other individuals, bounce different ideas off and find different things that you may not have thought of is definitely important.
So for the same reason, you may hire a consultant to bridge some skill gap that you have, for that system you're building.
Yep.
Hiring in an external penetration tester or external red team, or whichever term you want to use, would be a good way to validate the things you're already testing. Sort of what you're getting at.
Yeah, and learn. I mean, I think some of the good companies out there will let you sit with them and work with them. Show them what they're doing, and kind of use that as a knowledge transfer for everybody, so they can get better at what they do too. So it's more so providing better information to you to be able to learn and make decisions and to secure things in the future than it is anything else. So I think that's important, and definitely leveraging that. I mean, we as a pen tester, we're very good at understanding exposures and things that we're going to look for, whereas you may not be fully in that. I mean, I'm not the best sysadmin, that's not my job and responsibility, right? My job and responsibility is defending and attacking. So I'm really good at those two things. So it's just, areas of expertise that we may be good at, and things that we can, teach each other to work on it. I find that when I go into companies and I work with the defenders, the blue side, I learn something new every single day that I do it, something really cool that they've done differently, that they're going and testing, and they learn something new, like a new technique that I use that someone else hasn't used before in the past that they haven't seen. So, it's definitely a learning relationship between that to really build that up and help out.
So that, oh, go ahead.
Sorry. So do you find, what you've described with having as much information as possible is very much a white box testing methodology. Do you find any benefit to black box testing at all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what's nice about black box testing is it can test how effective your monitoring and detective controls are, right? And how you'd handle incident response scenarios, and how you would react to specific threats. The whole goal for organizations now is to not say that we can't get hacked, because we know that that's not possible to be 100% secure. But we know that is an attacker has to hack from one system to the next system to get access to the data they need typically, and it takes time. Whether that's a few hours or a few days, the goal is that we can detect those attacks at very early stages of it and minimize the damage and breach to the company. Then it takes 6 months after they already had access to all the data. So I think black box testing really helps validate that, hey, we're investing in the right areas. We've gotten better at detection. We've gotten better at other things. So definitely can help out from that side, and also maybe find things that you haven't seen before.
So as an aside, you're talking about basically it's time-based security. So if you've seen the book by Win Schwartau,
yep,
it's a really, really good primer on this, where it's
Win's awesome.
I guess the general idea is, and sort of the thing that I've been running with is, attackers are going to get in, get over it. They're going to get in. It's your job to figure out how they got in and stop them. And the time it takes to do that is how strong your security is.
That's right. That's 100% right. I think if you look at what our jobs are as defenders, or even just as being a sysadmin, we don't want our stuff to be owned. We don't want all of our corporate data to be, accessed by attackers. Putting the right things in place to say, okay, hopefully we can detect them in the first few minutes that they come in, or the first few hours that they come in, and then react and respond appropriately to minimize that damage. We know that it's possible for a user to click an email that they shouldn't have, or to go to a website they shouldn't have. It's just going to happen. And we're going to try everything we possibly can to make sure it doesn't, but it's going to happen. And so how do we respond to that and make sure that the company isn't impacted as much? That's part of our job and our responsibility of what we're trying to do. And there's a I don't use this reference too often, but there's the Verizon data breach report, which you can use for whatever you need to for it. But as part of that, they actually had a nice breakdown of statistical information around how long it typically takes attackers by the time they actually hack a computer to when they get access to the data. And it's usually a large percentage of that was a few days. So we're working with a few days of a window to detect an attacker here, not 6 months. And so our detective controls really need to be there. We really need to focus on detection than anything else right now. I mean, that's where we usually lack pretty heavily.
Right. That's an interesting statistic, because you would think that time to breach is much, much lower than a couple days. So a lot of we have to detect them the moment they do it that's just BS. You have time. You just have to. And even if you catch them after they've gotten to the data, there's still time to deal with it. So there's it's the faster you can catch them, even if it's after they've hit the crown jewels, there's still steps you can take to deal with that.
Yeah. And I think, from a finding them perspective, most of the time when you attack an organization, you may go after, 4 or 5 people, or maybe you only go after one person, right? That machine is usually not what we're concerned with as an attacker. We want to use that machine to move to a different system, lateral movement to another system, until we get access to a piece of data that is now ours, like a database or, an infrastructure thing that we want. So you usually have some time to be able to respond appropriately and boot the attackers out. But you have to have a good way of being able to do that. Like for sysadmins, if you're not familiar, I mean, Sysmon is amazing. You should all be installing that on your environment. It's a free tool from Microsoft that exposes what's called ETW, event log tracing, and exposes a lot of different detection criteria. Like you can detect process injection, lateral movement, pass the hash, Mimikatz, PowerShell injection, you name it. You can weird processes that are beaconing out to the internet. Sysmon's an awesome tool, but being able to take that data back and then somehow filter it and be able to understand what those attacks are is part of what you need to be doing in your job. And it's really, really important because it can literally save, that time window of it being a few hours, to respond to it than 6 months down the road.
And yeah, I guess log analysis is only so useful as it's better to get the data in real time. Yeah. If you find out 4 hours after it happened, you could already be owned, huh?
Right.
Well, you could already be owned, but if it's 4 hours after I'd rather be at 4 hours than 6 months, right?
Yeah,
yeah. And if you want, and maybe you want to be at 4 hours, but you can't get there unless you get more funding. Well, that's a business decision, right? So hey, we need to add 2 people in order to get down to 4 hours of detection. Do you want to spend it as a business? Well, no. Okay. Well, then we're still going to have to deal with 6 months, but I'm still going to try as best I can, to get that down. So it's a trade-off, and if companies don't want to spend the money to go and do it, then they need to realize that the risks are for not being able to do it. I mean, there's some good statistics in benchmarking, but on general, a healthy security program is around 10 to 13% of overall IT spend. And so if you're not doing that, it's and it's not to say that if you spend money on security, you're guaranteed to have a great program. That's not the case, right? But it means that you at least have to be spending on security to really make a difference on
if you spend on security, you have a security program, which is better than no security program.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
So I guess that discussion's a good transition into the next topic I really wanted to sort of hit on. And this has been something I've been curious about for, well, quite some time, probably as long as I've been going to DerbyCon. When I started going, honestly, an interest in computers got me into the career I'm in, which is, sysadmin, right? Operations mostly. That after years and years and years of dealing with, uptime and making systems solid and making systems reliable and whatnot, the mindset that I see in folks who are trying to break systems seems to be completely foreign to me. Right? So like the whole the out of the box thinking that I see from attackers. It seems like a thing that somewhere along the way I've lost. And I'm curious what if you see that in other operations folks, and if sysadmins make such great penetration testers, how does that mindset shift occur, or is it just that they never lost it?
You have it. It's just you're not focused on it, right? Your whole goal is operations. It's to make sure that the systems are up and running. Now, let me ask you a question. So, something goes wrong with the system. What do you do?
Start troubleshooting.
Right?
Yeah.
The same thing we do as attackers. If we can't break into a system, what do? We start troubleshooting and figure out a way to get into the system. So it's just understanding what's possible, and having a fundamental understanding of multicast and DNS and networking and Active Directory. That makes you such a strong candidate because you already understand how everything works. Now you just got to figure out what the attacks are to break that. And so it's a combination of building up on a foundation of someone teaching you or you learning on your own. So a good example is hey, I'm going to go build a simulated environment with server 2012 R2 and have Active Directory and have maybe 3 or 4 workstations, and I'm going to build a Kali box and then I'm going to go, try to look at certain things and figure things out based off of some online tutorials. That's understanding and starting to open your eyes of, hey, what's this port scan do? What are ports and protocols looking like? What versions of certain things look like? What you can do with those specific types of versions. You start to research those, and it starts to become a different type of troubleshooting. It's essentially putting together a puzzle. you're like, okay, I know people, just in general will capitalize their first initial of their password, and usually the last, few digits will be in numbers and then maybe a special character. So let's try summer 2017 and see how many people in Active Directory have that as a password, and you get one. Well, what do you do with that? Well, it's taking one user account or one vulnerability or exposure or one piece of information leakage and using your foundation of your knowledge around being a sysadmin to take that and say, well, hey, I can see that being applied over here, and this person's part of this department, so maybe they have access to this system over here that was built. And then from there, you go into there and you find some data that gets you over to here, and that gets you over to here, and just putting together a puzzle. That's it. It's the same steps you do troubleshooting of, hey, this error log message came out. This means that. I need to apply the specific patch or this registry entry or do what I need to do. It's just a different way of looking at it. That's all. And you really can start to get into security conscious mind by really just immersing yourself into it and kind of researching and learning. And that's it. It's no different than what you do on a day-to-day basis right now. I mean, when I first joined the military, my first roles was maintaining a classified system as a sysadmin. And then I got into and then I got picked up and put into the network exploitation side of things. So a foundation of that really, really helps you out to become an awesome hacker.
So it's really a matter of presenting a different sort of problem and then attacking it with the same mindset that I would any other operations task that I'm trying to, or any other tricky issue that I'm trying to work around. Research
the issue. You're like, hey, I see this weird thing here. I've never seen it before. Let's research it. Let's look for it and try to find it. Oh, looks like I lost video there.
Well, these things happen. I mean, the facial expression on the lost video is just absolutely priceless.
Yeah.
You're gonna get really quick.
Oh, there you're back.
So you spend an awful lot of time talking about Windows and exploiting Windows. Is this because that's your primary area of expertise is going after Windows boxes, or because that's what you normally see? I mean, do you have different people who are better at Linux or Mac or versus Windows? I mean, do you have a Plan 9 expert?
So we have different expertise in different areas, right? We have folks that are really good at assembly and C. We have folks that are good at Python and more higher level programming language. You have folks that specialize in web applications. Folks that specialize in reversing hardware, malware, you name it. We all have our own expertise in areas. The reason I specifically talk about Windows predominantly is because that's 98% of the workforce that's out there. You go into environments and everybody's using Windows. You may have some mixture or sprinkles of Mac. You may have some Linux environments in place, but predominantly, the environments that we run into are Windows. And it doesn't mean that we don't go after Linux as well. That's one thing we'll typically, target as part of that. Or, if it's a heavy Linux shop, we'll go after that as well. It's just a matter of really trying to figure out how you get it. But yes, I mean, and we all learn off of each other, which is a great thing. We focus on really trying to learn off of one another in our areas of expertise that makes us, much stronger as a group.
So do you primarily go after desktops and servers? I mean, how often do you actually go after the network itself, after Cisco's, Junipers, et cetera?
All the time, every single time.
So what sort of specific network attacks do you guys use? I mean, are you doing VLAN jumping, or are you cache poisoning, that sort of stuff?
Yep. So you can do definitely do VLAN hopping depending on how it's set up. Looking at voice communications and being able to reassemble data packets on voice communications, you can reassemble those. Doing ARP cache poisoning to do man-in-the-middle attacks and figure out what's going on, especially if they're logging in. Going after the administrators' machines themselves. Compromising from one machine, getting access, administrative level access or root over everything else, and then from there going to those machines. And I'm sure no administrator ever has SSH keys, on their boxes, or passwords that are stored in non-protected environments or on some sort of share. No one ever does that.
Not good ones.
Yeah,
I don't think I do.
I'll check. No, just kidding.
Yeah, right. We'll validate that for you.
Well, I mean, the SSH keys are there, but do you have the 64-character password necessary to open them?
Yeah, right.
Exactly, right. Or do I have a keystroke logger on your computer to go and find that anyway? So
yeah, right.
So there are ways for us to go after those systems, right? And obviously here's the thing that most folks don't understand is that it doesn't take an exploit or direct exploit for us to get access to a system. there's so many systems that interact with that system, or passwords that are reused in different locations, or things that communicate back and forth, like service accounts, that can be actively used that allow us access into there. So again, it's back to that piecing the puzzle together to really figure out access into those environments. So I don't have to run like a direct exploit to get access to a Cisco device, or a Juniper or Palo Alto. The administrator that logs into that machine is typically who I target to get access into that environment.
So taking this back to, we spent a lot of time on the podcast talking about Docker over the last year.
Yeah.
Are you seeing a lot of Docker deployments at this point, or is this just starting to trickle out? Or
I see a lot of people talking about Docker. I don't see a lot of people implementing Docker at this point. So that's the big difference. And containerization and sandboxing, huge fan of it. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think it's definitely the way of the future, and it's things that have been around for a long time. I just think it's incredibly complex for a lot of companies to be able to move to that.
Yeah, Jason, I know you've tinkered with Docker, so have I. But you're exactly right. I've talked about it a lot.
Yep.
We don't have anything deployed on Docker yet.
Everybody is talking about Docker.
Yeah, I have a handful of personal things on Docker, but there is nothing at the enterprise level, not yet.
Yeah, the majority of my personal stuff is on Docker at this point, and we're pretty far along. I don't typically talk about my job, but we're quite far down the path of deploying everything on Docker. So
that's awesome. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I am really curious what's going to happen when people start attacking Docker in earnest. Or maybe they already have. I don't know if you can speak to that, Dave. But
I don't think there's enough out there right now to go and do it. That's the thing. And I'm curious as well. I think, as more and more technology becomes more and more prevalent, you're going to see more and more attacks to those, right? It's like the whole OS X versus Windows thing. OS X is Mac OS is far from being the most secure operating system out there by any stretch of means. But it's such a low percentage that there's not a huge amount of attackers that are going after it. So because they're going after Windows, which is 98% of the workforce. So would you rather go after 98% or 2%? I don't. It's pretty clear. So I think as it gets more and more more and more popular, I think there's gonna be a lot more sniff tests that go on those quite a bit.
Yeah, it really feels like the next wave of virtualization. Yeah. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was, virtualize all the things. Oh, that's just a toy. Virtualizing dev. And then before you know it, everyone's on production and virtualization. And then people are figuring out how to break out of hypervisor, break out of guests into the host and all kinds of things. And, it's the end of the world.
Even Oracle allows virtualization now.
Yeah, right. Only if you use their platform.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it still costs you,
but it supports.
I think it costs you more to virtualize it than it does to put it on metal. But at least they allow it now.
Yeah, right.
That makes perfect sense. Well, there was a company that was very similar to kind of like a Docker-esque experience. It was a security company called Bromium, and what they used to do is it was micro virtualization where like every tab that you would open would be its own virtual machine. And so you'd open up an Internet Explorer tab. People still use that apparently. You'd open up an Internet Explorer tab and, you would go to a website and that was actually in its own virtual machine. From a security perspective, fantastic, right? I'd have to break out of a sandbox to get access to the host OS. Now what they realize is that that's in a great perfect world where no one can do work or, there's no weird, business processes or things like that. And so what they found is they couldn't scale it. And so Bromium as a company, wasn't very successful. At least not that I've been able to tell. They haven't, made any headway in the market because the technology was so complex. And it was such a burden on the users and they couldn't do anything. And so, that was kind of the major issue. It's the same adoption thing that I'll see with Docker is I think it'll take some time. It'll eventually work though. But it'll be not massively adopted because it changes how people do things on a very substantial basis, and it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, Docker definitely has a learning curve, and it really does change the way you're deploying applications. Yep. So, I think until all the developers are on board, it's going to be a slow curve.
Bromium was pretty slick. But of course, once you start allowing transfer of data between applications, which you have to do in order to make things work. Now you've destroyed the ability to really sandbox well. So
Yep. That's exactly what they ran into.
Yeah.
So I think from an adoption perspective, we'll see. From a security standpoint, I haven't personally tested Docker just because I haven't run into it before. But when I do, I'd love to take a look at it.
Cool. All right, so that was mainly the topics I had. Jason, you wanted to chat a little deeper on. Well, now I've already lost track of what you want to talk about. Go.
So I was having a chat with my my buddy Trevor a couple months ago over
a milkshake.
over a milkshake.
I'm not even lying. My wife texted me and she's like, "Hey, what do you want from DQ?" I'm like, "A strawberry milkshake." That's what I said to her. So just like 2 seconds ago, like I had my phone like slowly up here, and I'm texting back at her really fast as I'm on the podcast. So milkshake. So
we caught the that little was that CNN or Fox or
yeah,
I forget what it was. That was
great.
Your ability, you deadpanned that. That was props, man. That was impressive. Like, and it just like slid right past. And meanwhile, the internet was blowing up.
No, yeah, I could see my phone was like and I'm like, I'm sitting there just going through it like nothing ever happened,
Oh boy. Great. I've lost my train of thought here. Baselining. So low hanging fruit. What do you if you're entering any given engagement, what's the first thing you go after? I mean, it sounds like desktops, but I mean, from a sysadmin perspective, what can we do to prevent you from getting in there? Because I mean, I don't want to make your job easy.
Yeah, absolutely.
You need to work for the money.
Interconnectivity between workstations is important. So disabling NetBIOS and RPC from workstation to workstation. So not allowing 135.445, 139, blocking those at the firewall from workstation to workstation traffic. I understand you probably can't do it from workstation to server. In some cases, you usually can, unless they're file servers or whatnot, but disallowing those lower level protocol traffics. And the reason for that is if I compromise one user, I don't want to be able to move from one system to the next system to the next system until I get access to a sysadmin's box that has a bunch of stuff. So if you disallow those port intercommunication traffic ports, just enable the Windows firewall through group policy and block 139, 135 and 445. Those are the things that we can do to go and prevent a lot of those. So that's one piece there. Disabling multicast traffic. So LLMNR, local link multicast name resolution, and NBNS, NetBIOS name services. Disabling those two things are going to be important. And the reason for that is with multicast. Go ahead. You gonna say something?
Oh, no, no, I'm listening.
With LLMNR and NBNS, what happens is multicast will try to broadcast out to the local subnet ranges and say, "Hey, I'm looking for file server 1," and the attacker will be like, "Oh yeah, I'm file server 1. Come on, connect to me." And Windows does some awesome stuff and passes the netnetm v1 or netnetm v2 hashes to the attacker's machine, and then they can crack those offline and then use those to attack. So disabling multicast and NBNS is one. SPNs, service principal names. So SPNs, the way that they work is they're a special attribute that gets assigned to an Active Directory user account. That gives them special permissions to be able to perform, like service level stuff. Like, a lot of times you'll see them on SQL Service accounts, SharePoint Service accounts, things like that. And so what's great is as a normal regular user, I can query Active Directory and say, "Hey, Active Directory, I want you to pass me a list of all of your SPN accounts that have access to my box." And when it does that, it actually passes those and the hash values for those accounts with them as well. So you can actually just as a regular user extract all the usernames and password hashes from any SPN account within the entire domain and then crack those offline. So make sure that all of your SPN passwords are super, super complex because someone can just go and grab those and then yank them and then you're screwed. So that's another one. Everybody's shaking their heads because it's fantastic.
I've only asked you for the usernames. I didn't ask you for the passwords.
Right.
What the hell are you sending that to me for?
You might need them. Here, take it.
Here, you might need them. No, and the way that it's authenticating against and you're capturing those, right? But it's just a regular user account. You don't have to be an admin or anything. It's fantastic.
So this raises a point of curiosity for me. I realize that Active Directory is a very powerful tool, not just from an attacker's perspective, but from a systems management and desktop management perspective, and just overall manageability of a large group of machines. If you walked into a network that did not have Active Directory, and there was a bunch of just standalone machines and standalone servers and whatnot, would you all of a sudden find that a lot of your bag of tricks was limited? Or is that not really the case? You just move on to the next thing that's a good target.
Well, we as attackers rely off of information that allows us access to other systems, right? So unless we're finding a predominant exploit across the board, yeah, it would be difficult. The issue that you start running into in non-managed environments is that, the deviations of those systems start to become pretty substantial. So, from that side, it maybe be a little bit more difficult, but at the same time, you'd probably find more deviations of things and more insecurities there in a non-managed environment than you would somewhere else. But just by having Active Directory doesn't mean that you're insecure. There's definitely ways of locking it down. But again, this goes back to the debate on sysadmins. Sysadmins need to know what they're doing when it comes to security, because they can lock down their environments to be much better. Like, a lot of people ask, well, why should I move to server 2000 from 2008 R2 native mode, functional levels in Active Directory to 2012? Well, there's a lot of reasons. Kerberos authentication is much more improved. There's a lot of security things that happen. Role-based OUs that you can assign individual password policies to. So I can have service accounts have a 70-character password, and my normal user accounts having a 14-character password. So, it's things like that you kind of need to understand what the exposures are. Also, some things that we go after too is Jboss, Jenkins, Apache. I'm trying to think of some other ones that are pretty good low-hanging fruit.
Gee, you go after Jenkins, huh?
I love Jenkins.
Imagine that.
Look at my surprised face.
Jenkins is fantastic for us.
And the security on it is just top notch.
Yeah, Jenkins is usually the first one's the fall. If there's a Jenkins install, you can guarantee it's probably unsecured. So that's a good one.
So quick Active Directory question. There's a piece of software fairly popular, and I want to say it's like Harpoon, or Nate, you know what this is, what I'm talking about. That adds a bunch of fake data to Active Directory.
You mean Javelin?
Javelin, yes, Javelin.
You were close.
Right, it's a thing with a pointy end on it.
One you throw, one you shoot through water. They're both pointy.
Have you encountered Javelin? Does that help with this SPN thing, or does the fact that you're requesting this information just bypass the Javelin piece altogether?
So I'm not familiar with Javelin specifically. We don't get to see a lot of the back end stuff sometimes. But I think what you're referring to is they put a bunch of fake data in there, and then hopefully for detection. So there's a whole industry around this called Canary, what we call deception technology, which puts a lot of fake data throughout the network, fake LLMNR, fake credentials in memory. So a good example of another attack vector that we go is once we compromise a machine, Microsoft for the longest time had a thing called wdigest, which allowed you to extract clear text passwords out of memory. There's a tool called Mimikatz that goes and does that for you. So when you log in with your username and password, what will happen is you type in your username and password, Microsoft actually stores that clear text password in memory. So it's not your hash, it's the clear text password. So if you have a 500-character password, yeah. Yeah, store in memory.
Look, it's really convenient. That way Windows can just go ahead and log in for you.
You don't know. Yeah. I mean, it's all about single sign-on. Why would you use a token when you can just store the clear text password? The user gave it to you.
Right.
ASLR will protect you.
Well, even so one funny thing about that one specifically is they released a fix for Windows 8 and above, or Windows 7 above, or whatever, and in order to get around that fix is you just re-enable a registry key from a 0 to a 1, and then all of a sudden you're all set again. So it's interesting, right? But even better, so they fixed it in Windows 10, but then you can actually extract the clear text username and the hash values directly from memory, the LM and NTLM hashes from memory as well, and then crack those offline. So, it's a cat and mouse game with these folks in a lot of cases. But where was I going with? Oh, so the Canary stuff. So a lot of times people will put like fake passwords in memory, and then if you see a failed login attempt, from that account, that's a good indication. There's a tool called invoke run as by a guy named Fuzzy Security. If you go to github.com/fuzzy security, there's an invoke run as, and you may be familiar with this command as a sysadmin. If you type in command .exe and you type in your command, you can do a /net only, and what that does is it doesn't authenticate your account to the rest of the environment. It locally caches it. So what you can do with that is you can actually create a scheduled task that runs this invoke run as with a fake domain admin, or make it a legit domain admin, give it a fake password, and then look for any, was it 4627s or 4628s invalid login attempts with bad username and password. So if you look for those specific user accounts, that an attacker's in your environment. So there are definitely ways to trip us up as attackers that make us go after things that are enticing, and put those throughout your network. And if you ever see that, you'll be like, oh my gosh, you start reacting because somebody's on your infrastructure. So deception does have a big capability. I've gotten snagged by deception before. It sucks.
You're assuming somebody's watching the logs.
Well, right. You actually the logs. Right?
Assumedly, if you've put this sort of honeypot in place, you're going to watch it. Like, wouldn't
This
that
one's
make
specifically,
sense?
right? Or a few of these, because
Well-
you never ever see it. This in your subject line should be. Can I swear in the podcast? Is that okay?
Go for it.
Yeah, whatever.
Oh crud! I'll just say crud. I'll just say crud. I was gonna say the S word, but say oh crud. You know that this is a huge alarm. You know, big red letters and everything else that goes involved in there. You know, those are the types of alarms that you want to definitely view. So have it kick off an automatic email when this happens, right?
Somebody hit this thing no one should ever hit unless they're bad guys.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I've written code that does that and sends an email that says, "Uh-oh, hack attack! Quick, go look at this."
Hack attack, and it's got a picture of like was it the dude with the Nintendo sling and the hacker time thing? But yeah,
or Hacker Man. I mean,
Hacker Man. That's Hacker Man. Yeah, there we go. But think about it, even from like a Linux perspective. I mean, why not put fake data in the .bash files, .bashrc files that have SSH keys in there that are not legit, or having fake SSH keys that get you access to a box that's like super uber awesome Linux machine that has access to all of our data, and they go to SSH in that machine and you see those attempts, or changing the bash history every time in a cron job so that it puts fake passwords in place to a SSH server, and then they go and get an invalid attempt that way. So there are things you can do to really jack people up on the deception side.
I need to go change my DNS. Apparently, our internal DNS.
The awesome Linux server 1, don't look here, is not
a great
way to name your machines.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing too, like naming schemes and things like that. Like SQL Server 217.
Yeah.
Like, oh thanks, and I know you
see I used to work with Nate, and we both worked at a college. And
I was just going to give the same story.
We were very much for coming up with unique naming schemes, Futurama characters, Disney characters, whatever happened to fit our fancy.
Don't forget Lord of the Rings. Got
Lord of the Rings. Yep, Lord of the Rings was a big one, and the pushback on it was intense. I mean, it was sort of thing where we had come up with a scheme, and like different character sets would be. Like these are web servers, those are database servers, but only we knew that, right?
Only knew that.
Like public knowledge, right?
Yeah.
So,
and immediately got pushback.
Like, but the names don't make any sense. How do we know what the server is? Like,
you should be using like Web Zero and SQL Zero.
I'm sorry, Mr. Database Admin, but you have 3 servers to worry about. If you can't learn the names, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Also, naming it MySQL database, 5.5 version 2 is probably giving away too much information.
See, I used to, like, when I name my servers, I'll actually name it like SQL Server or Exchange, but it won't be an Exchange server or a SQL server in any way, shape, or form. It'll be
there you go.
It's like
you're trolling. I got it.
Yeah. You gotta troll. I mean, trolls gotta troll.
The server labeled Exchange is actually, not even a Windows box.
Yeah.
It's like that's the DNS server.
Exactly. You mess with them any way you can.
Yeah.
Speaking of messing with people, you have a couple of tools that you've written to do some interesting things. You've got what do you got? You got set, and you've got what's the other? Artillery. Artillery is the good one. That's the one that was that seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
I've always been curious. Did you name that after the Infected Mushroom song?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite.
Every time I hear that song, I'm like, did he?
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, if you look at some of my early coding on set, a lot of the version names were named off of. I was going through a huge Infected Mushroom kick, so a lot of those were like songs that I was coding to at the time that I was really keen on. Or in fact, I even think I have a version before I actually wrote Artillery. I have a version of set that was called Artillery, and that's where I ended up getting the name from. So it's one of those ones where like you go through certain phases or things that are motivational in your life, and you kind of use those as methods for it. But Artillery is a great song by Infected Mushroom, and after that,
absolutely.
Yeah, but I have a bunch of open source tools. I mean, the Social Engineer Toolkit. I do a tool. It's an obfuscation tool for PowerShell injection called Unicorn. I just released a new command and control infrastructure called Trevor C2. I do Artillery. I also, for folks that use OSSEC, I wrote a OSSEC automation manager for key exchanges. So when OSSEC happens, you have a server and you have a client, and that client has to pair with the server. So I actually wrote a whole protocol that leverages AES to communicate those key exchanges and automatically pair those devices for you, so that you can manage, OSSEC much easier from a defensive standpoint. Artillery is fun. it's a honeypotting tool, so basically it creates a low, mid, and high subset range of ports that are common. And so someone goes and port scans them and actually responds back with, garbage protocol data. And then, it notifies that someone's, in your environment trying to port scan or, SSH brute force, or, it's active honeypotting basically in your environment, which is really neat. So it's been fun projects. I mean, I code on, when I come home, I'm either playing Destiny. Well, first of all, I spend time with my family. That's the most important. But when they go to bed, I'm either coding or playing Destiny 2. So that's it.
Gotta balance the fun and the work, right?
I spent the money on Destiny 1, and I still haven't been able to get over that. I just don't want to shell out the money for Destiny 2 because the first one was just such a disappointment.
Yeah.
So well, eventually,
like Destiny 1, you're not gonna like Destiny 2.
If you like it or didn't like it,
if you didn't like Destiny 1, you're not gonna like Destiny 2.
It wasn't horrible. I wanted a lot more than what was there, and
what they delivered and what they promised was much different, right?
Right.
And they were supposed to fix a lot of the main issues with Destiny 2, and it really is the same grinding, which is fine. I mean, you expect those from more of the FPS RPG type games, but it's basically the same exact thing. Once you get past the storyline, it's the exact same stuff that you're doing before than anything else. And they really haven't fixed anything. In fact, they just got busted recently. Destiny, everybody's really pissed at Bungie right now because they had a calculation formula. So let's just say I killed a monster and you get 200 XP, it would only actually record like 50 XP if you've been playing for a longer period of time, but it would still tell you that you're getting 200 XP. So it was trying to intentionally slow down and hurt players that have been playing longer than others. So
wow.
They put a whole nerfing system in place that it was basically like mischievous and nefarious because they would tell you.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
Why would you punish your players like that? That's not
right.
Cool.
Exactly. You're loyal.
They didn't want you to get.
Warcraft did that where the longer you play, I mean the XP kind of levels out. At some point.
Warcraft would give you. They give you a bonus if you rested for a long time.
Right. If you're offline for a certain period of time, they'll get a bonus. So
that was probably to motivate you to come back and play.
Well, there's that, and their stated motivation was to not have you die because you're playing too long. But
yeah, right.
Which I'm sure has happened many times.
So back on the Sysadmin piece. If you're not using OSSEC,
games, man, come on.
I know. Me not talking about video games. If you're not using OSSEC, it's almost like free log monitoring. It is probably one of the best pieces of software out there.
I didn't know you had released a tool that helped those key exchanges. I'm actually going to have to look into that.
It's pretty slick.
I have an aging OSSEC deployment, which I think Jason stood up when he was still working with me. It needs attention, and I think I'm going to just redeploy the whole thing, and that would actually be really handy.
On the plus side, it hasn't really changed much in the past couple of years. They actually haven't done any releases because the guy who originally started his own company called, is he Securia? I think he's Securia. I forget, but he's doing other things now. And OSSEC is kind of maintained by the open source community. We've lost Dave.
No,
that's a horrible thing. So OSSEC is kind of maintained by the security community. And right now, at least, it's sort of kind of just in maintenance mode. It'd be nice to see something more happen with it. But I think what's happening is the people that maintain it have enough time to maintain it, but not enough time to sort of move it forward.
Right. I know there have been several releases that I haven't kept up with, unfortunately. I shouldn't admit that on the podcast, should I?
Well, I mean, it's not like there's exploits in them.
Right. I hope.
All right. So now we're just going to sit around. There he's back. The man in white. He's back. Now we got to wait for him to fiddle with his
I'm back. No, I'm back.
Oh, good. The mic works. The video works. Everything. We're good.
So
it's that Ohio internet.
Tab. If you open up a new tab, it opens up the same link, right? And then it completely cancels out the other one. I'm sorry, I don't use Google Hangouts very often, so I'm having some tech issues.
Yeah, we use it for this, and that's
all
the
good.
only
It's fine.
reason we use
It's
it.
working great. I'm the reason that this happened this time. I'm full blame for this. So
Yeah, so I mean,
No, no.
when we started the podcast a little over a year ago, I was like, okay, everyone uses Skype. Why don't we use Skype? And Jason's like, I'm not putting another Microsoft application on my Mac. Like, okay, how about Hangouts? I don't really like Google either. Okay,
I was thinking like tin cans
I've
and
got
string.
some string.
what we can do is like I can record it off of my phone, and then I'll send you my video clip via secure message, and then you can respond back to it with your phone, and then I'll download it in the secure method, and then I'll respond back to it, and then you piece it all together. It's perfect.
What we need is Signal video conferencing on our computers, and then
I mean, I seriously did look into ways we could host our own video cast just because of that. And then I said, you know what? You're just going to have to use Hangouts.
And it's the only thing I use it
for this.
To date, every single time I start a Hangout, if I don't go in and adjust the microphone and the speaker, you can't hear me
every time.
And I can't hear anybody every single time. I have no idea why. So it's just sort of become a thing. It's like the ritual. Oh, time to do the podcast. Okay.
Can't hear you.
Now I've got it down to a science.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Hold on, I gotta do this, and that. Okay, we're good.
I didn't mess up any recording or anything there.
No. He'll stitch it together.
Yeah, it'll be fine. He does
magic, or we'll just leave it in. And
we don't take ourselves so seriously that sort of a thing would not be something we'd leave in the show.
You should. Good. Right. We're just talking about. So we were talking about video games, and we switched to more IT topics, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Right.
So I was saying OSSIC's worth it. It's pretty
There's
much.
Also a couple others. I mean, Security Onion is another good one to go and actively leverage from a detection standpoint. It's more of like a pre-sim. There's a lot of good stuff out there. A lot of great resources that you can use to get there too. I mean, it's good stuff. PFSense from a kind of like a next-gen firewall type of side. It's good stuff. Open source.
Bro is one that comes up a lot. That I haven't had a lot of time to dig into. But
I have meant to look at Bro, and I just haven't.
Bro's awesome. So it's called Bro IDS. I think they're rebranding it to something different. But what's nice about that is and there's also Suricata as well. So Suricata is more of a snort replacement that came out and it's still actively maintained and has signatures and all that good stuff for network-based attacks. What's nice about Bro is it's more than just a intrusion detection system. Not really even an intrusion detection system. It's more of a behavior analytics, behavior analysis that you can build off of like span or tap ports to look at what's happening out there and really report on a lot of weird traffic. It gives you a lot of visibility into your environment. Bro's amazing. It's probably one of the best things out there.
Cool. So Bro isn't you mentioned something else as though it were a snort replacement. Bro really isn't, or
you absolutely can make it that. You can absolutely make that. But what we'll commonly see is most folks will have like Bro in place for like more network analysis, and then you have like Suricata automatically going through things. So Suricata is like more of like a signature base, whereas Bro is more going to be behavior.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I guess Snort was really all about signature-based detection.
Oh yeah. In fact, before Snort got acquired, it was an open source framework, that people would develop, things for. And so Suricata is essentially it's a fork of Snort. Oh,
okay. Yeah, I ran Snort 10 years ago or so before it was purchased. And I don't think I've touched it since because my role focused to more of a sysadmin style and not, I don't have to do any more network monitoring or anything like that anymore. So yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
No, finish up.
No, you go. No, me.
So yeah. I know we can do this all day. So signature based stuff. What's your thought on that? I mean, the thing that I always see is signatures are just not updated, and then it's a useless tool at that point.
Well, when you're talking signatures, I think they still provide some value, especially for more low hanging fruit stuff. Things that have already been out there and identified. But the problem is that when it comes to most technology nowadays, we as attackers try to exhibit legitimate patterns of behavior. So, we're not going to use signatures. We're not going to use, things that are going to be typically snagged. So, you have to start looking at baselining your environment and what that means. So, what does an HTTPS shell look like? What does a DNS shell look like? What does that type of data look like? What does lateral movement look like? What are certain type of application control bypasses? Like, You may not know this, but one of the so PowerShell is a big method for exploitation right now, right? But PowerShell is getting much better at logging. You have what's called script lock logging, constrained language mode in PowerShell version 5. So if you're not using that, heavily recommend switching to that from a PowerShell perspective. Enable script lock logging, some awesome logging on that side. But attackers are realizing that, and they're realizing that PowerShell is very much a kind of a dying breed for us because of the logging that's in there. And granted, we can circumvent and stuff like that, but a lot of this stuff is going into application control bypasses. So from there, like application whitelisting, in Windows, you have device guard, and software restriction policies and app locker for older versions. And what we can do as attackers is Microsoft has given us binaries that are legitimate binaries that give us the ability to do what's called remote code execution. So things like msbuild, certutil, regsvr32, all legitimate Windows binaries that have remote code execution functionality. So we can actually use msbuild to call a remote XML file that has our C# code in it that executes code in memory. It never touches disk. We can do the same thing for regsvr32. We can have regsvr32, which, by the way, happens to have its own browser built into it. Go and download a file that doesn't have to have any extension type and execute directly into memory.
Is it better than IE?
For some reason, it has more functionality than IE. It's weird.
And it's supported by more sites.
So did you learn all of this last year at DerbyCon in that talk that was how to use Windows to exploit Windows?
No, I didn't actually. I didn't see that one. Who did that one?
I don't remember who it was. I think it was last year's. There was a talk using only Windows tools to exploit Windows.
Oh, I think it was called hacking off the land or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
I've heard that term used to describe exactly what you're talking about. So
yeah. Yeah, it's the attack surface on Windows that we have available to us is absolutely amazing. There's actually a new one out now that's so cool. So there used to be a way. There's a tool that came out called Ruler, and what Ruler would do is, let's just say you compromise someone's Exchange credentials, you could publish a rule out to that person's computer through OWA, and it would give you remote code execution. So basically, if you hacked OWA, you can make a rule that goes and downloads and executes a file. And so when the person would go and sync Outlook, and hit send and receive, that rule would get pushed down to their profile, and then it would execute code. Well, Microsoft patched that. But what they didn't patch is there's like 16 other ways to do the exact same thing, through OWA. So like whenever you like refresh a page, like in Outlook, when you go to the home tab, there's parts in there that are vulnerable that will go and download code and execute it automatically. So every time the person hits home, it gives you a shell. It's so many different ways of leveraging Microsoft's platform to give us remote code execution. So like I think there's like a total of like 60 or 70 different binaries out there. BG info, by the way, BG info that we all use for background information, for the IP addresses and everything. Yeah. There's a tab in there to go and download a remote VB script that can contain whatever you want to. So you can get full remote code execution through BG info, and it's a signed Microsoft binary. So, there's so many different ways of going and doing things that make it really difficult for defenders. But those are binaries that we should be looking at. Hey, why is BG info now beaconing out to the internet? That's probably not good, right? Because
I need more reasons to hate Outlook and other Microsoft stuff.
Dude, I'll tell you, Outlook 2016, I swear. I have a virtual machine with Outlook 2016 and one for Mac. I'll tell you the Mac version is substantially better. Like the Outlook 2016, I don't know how users in a workforce can use that dang thing. I have no idea.
Everyone loves their Outlook. Everyone loves their Outlook. Years ago, we had to we deployed a new mail system. It was shortly before I started at the place that I'm at. My predecessor built the thing, and we're running an open source tool which emulates Exchange, because everybody had to have their Outlook. They had to have their calendaring. It's like, come on, people, there are better solutions out here. No, it has to work with Outlook. Okay, and so because of that, we have to maintain all the support for Outlook over the years. Yeah.
I wonder if that's going to change.
It's frustrating.
I wonder if that's going to change with like the newer generation of kids. All these kids are getting taught on Chromebooks and minimal type things. It's going to be interesting to see if our framework changes from Microsoft to something else.
There are some people that speculate that email itself will eventually die off. It may not be in our lifetimes, but email is just, it's an aging technology to begin with. And it's all this stuff tacked onto it, and it's a great vector for phishing and for spam and for all kinds of other abuse. And a lot of young kids, they use it because they have to, only because, you know, their bank requires them to have an email address or whatever.
Yeah.
As that shifts, you know.
I'm terrified of the workforce that comes out of, yeah, I learned everything on a Chromebook.
Well, I'm saying from like a regular user perspective, you know, you have the apps presented right there for you. You can't mess anything up. They're pre-configured. You can't go anywhere else other than them. You know, like it's a minimalistic operating system. So hopefully, you know, you get to a point to where we don't have to have the full-fledged Windows suite or the full-fledged Mac suite or anything else out there. I mean, you know, hopefully we go to something smaller. I mean, honestly, I have a Windows machine. You know, I'm actually on a Windows machine right now. This is my Windows laptop here. I use it for gaming for Destiny, but my Mac's over there. You know, so, you know, I hope someday we get off of, you know, the full-fledged platforms, because people don't need it. People don't need a full-fledged operating system. They just don't.
I think I would go insane if I were trapped in a Chromebook.
Oh,
as different class of user.
As would I. Right.
Nuh-uh. Yeah, I mean, they gave laptop. My son got a laptop, MacBook, when he got to school, and literally the first thing he did was start hacking at it, trying to get out of the crazy loser shells that they had him stuck in. And so I mean, he's already well on that way of going beyond like the being stuck in a walled garden. He can't stand it. So I mean, there's at least some hope, but I the Chromebook generation just still, you know,
school's interesting too with that, you know. I mean, yeah,
you know, I'm in the position now where I actually get to do hiring, and one of the things that I find a lot is I'm trying to hire people to with a certain skill set, and there's very simple pieces of the skill set that are just completely lacking. I mean, networking is probably the biggest one. You know, they know how a web browser works. They can run an operating system. You know, they can build a Linux box. But you know, you ask them what an IP is, and they're like, "Oh, that's that number thing that makes it so you can go places." Yeah, how do you make one of those? Is that, you know,
describe why you use it? A what?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's another thing that looks like an IP, right? Yeah.
Well, I think,
and that's just IPv4. Wait till 6 is more prevalent.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think if you look at some of the things that we had to go through early on in our ages, right? I mean, it was very much so understanding a foundation of things, understanding foundation of the OSI model. I don't know if they teach the OSI model anymore. You know, those are things that you know, kids aren't getting taught nowadays. And even from a programming perspective, you know, they're focusing on all these object-oriented programming languages and not going down the fundamentals of things like C, which is really how everything's still really built off. I mean, all of your languages are still built off of those as a foundation, you know. And so, you know, not having a good understanding of networking, communications, protocols, how they work, you know, that is a big hindrance that you, especially in the hacking side, you have to have. We see that too. When I go to hire somebody, you know, they don't know, foundation of you know, the building blocks of how operating systems communicate, protocol analysis, stuff like that. You know, it's not going to be a good ride for you on the security side. So things that we definitely needed to keep teaching.
Yeah, I mean, I actually saw that fading when I went through high school, and that's only in the late 90s, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I had the virtue of a technical school where they taught me, like, okay, these are what bits and bytes are. This is what memory is. This is how all this stuff goes together and whatever. I don't think that my kids are going to go through any of that.
Yeah.
My daughter's going to learn it from me.
Yeah.
I don't think she's ever going to learn it in school.
There's also, I mean, there's new stuff coming out that, like, so my son is doing some programming stuff, and I'm honestly, I'm scratching my head because you know what the 8 types of variables are, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like, and my first thing is like, well, let's see, you got string, integers, floats, you know, like, and I'm going like that. He's like, no, accumulators and aggregators, and I'm like, what are you talking about? What is that? This is what they're teaching, and I'm like,
is this Common Core programming?
I guess.
So they have to find 10s?
Common Core programming. Wow.
Yeah, because so yeah, it's some of it's just trying to wrap my head around like what he's learning, and I'm like, wait, I have to. have to stay on what they're teaching him, because if I teach him the real stuff, then he'll get bad grades because the teacher doesn't know what we're talking about.
Save that for after he's passed his class, and then say, okay, all that crap you learned, here's how you really do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's funny. I'm on a I try to help out with school districts, and I'm on the board for the technology board for one of the school districts here in Cleveland. And they get mandates around the tests from the state level, and so the state levels will basically push down the curriculum of what the schools have to provide. And from a programming perspective, it's horrendous. Like, it is absolutely not what you'd want to teach anybody. And so like the teacher that's teaching this is struggling because, like, well, I have to teach this stuff that they get graded on, but this is really what we should be teaching them. So it's always a balance of that. Like, how do I give them the right stuff to be successful while, meeting what everybody gets graded upon? That's really important. And, schools are an interesting piece of it. Even colleges lag behind. I mean, we're just starting, we see information security classes now, but they're already outdated by the time they go through, the whole accreditation process for them. So it's a tough, school's very tough. I think that's, honestly, all together, like, if I someday retire from InfoSec, I will become a school teacher. Like, that's all I'm going to do is just like teach kids like cool stuff, how to hack. And I'm not going to worry about, like, the only problem I have to get around is grades. I don't think I can do grading. So I have to find somebody to do the grades for me. Other than that, that'd be cool.
You just make,
you just make it up.
Grade them automatically, put it into a program, let the program do the
Hey,
right. Your grades are now being served by artillery.
Yeah. That's for an AI engine that automatically grades you.
Trevor AI says you got
Trevor AI. That's the next one. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what you have against COBOL and Fortran, but that's a base language that kids must learn in school.
Ooh, okay. I think if I were to say any language, I would say like C++ would probably be the foundational language that I would teach everybody. And then from there, start going to some scripting languages like Python. Never Perl. Perl's horrible. But
hey, I like Perl.
I agree with Perl.
Hey guys, I gotta go.
Yeah. No, Perl.
Are we gonna get into the whole Nano versus VI thing too?
No, Perl was just the first language I was ever proficient in, and it holds a special place.
Sure.
Partially of hatred in my heart.
And as long as you're good with VI, we're not gonna have a problem.
Yeah, right.
Hey, I use them all. So, but I grew up with Pico, and then they got replaced by Nano.
Pico.
So
Pico and Nano.
Nah, I can use VI too. I pop in between all of them. So
I started
Pico
with
and Nano, everybody's first editor.
No, I started with Ed.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And that
explains a lot.
I mean, that was painful, but yeah.
No, needless to say, I switched between them all, but I would actually tell you I levitate more towards Nano.
That's because it's easy.
I mean, sometimes you just need a simple editor to just change some text around. But
It's a funny story.
Yeah.
All my programming and artillery set, everything else. Guess what I use the program in?
Emacs, of course.
Nano. I don't use anything other than Nano, man.
Yeah.
Like I don't use an IDE. I don't use anything. I don't use anything. I just use it.
Not having an IDE is fine.
That's hardcore right there.
Yeah. I prefer it. It's easier on me, and I can navigate and move through things much faster. I'm much more efficient than I would be.
Yeah, I mean, you learn your tool. I worked for a guy once, and for all of his faults, one of the things he did tell me, it was a development firm. I was their network/systems guy. He said that whenever he's hiring a programmer, that they were primarily like a C# shop, and he would say, can you write me a program to do this? It's something simple, like a hello world or whatever, right? And he would just hand him his laptop with Notepad open. He'd say, write me the code to do this thing. And he said the number of professional programmers that would look at him and go like, well, how am I supposed to write in this? Where's my editor? Where's Visual Studio?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you don't need that. It's code. You can write the code. It's all text.
Yeah.
And he said if they couldn't do that, then he wouldn't, he would definitely not consider them capable programmers.
Well, it's a way of seeing who's competent, right? And who actually understands the programming languages versus who's, Googling, Stack Overflow for information, So
if you're depending on your editor to make the programming work for you, then maybe you're not as competent as you think you are.
Yep.
And Googling Stack Overflow isn't necessarily a bad thing as long as you understand.
Yeah.
As long as you know what you're looking for when you get there.
What was I heard an awesome story. it might have been on defensive sec the other. I mean, I'm a little bit behind, so this is probably a couple month ago, but listen to too many podcasts. But they were talking about a car company that had a major flaw in their app, their phone app.
Okay.
And somebody had pointed out and said like, oh no, it was Talk Python to me. So I know who it was now. And they were talking, they said like, look, here's this major flaw and this needs to get fixed. So they took the whole site offline and whatever, and they come out with a new version. And it was Troy Hunt that was on the podcast.
Yeah, Troy's awesome.
And he said the one thing that they were scratching their head about at the very bottom of the app was this snippet of text that said something about Stack Overflow. And they found out later, like, I guess they kind of decompiled it or whatever and figured it out and put it into Google, found out the guy fixed the problem. They found the actual post where the guy asked how to fix this problem. Yeah. And the fix is literally cut and paste from Stack Overflow into the code to the point where they didn't pull the footer out of it and it shows up in the app.
That's funny. Yeah.
So I mean,
scary,
which is great. You fix the problem, but clearly you don't understand how you fix the problem, which is a major issue.
It works. Ship it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny. I am by no stretch of means a formal programmer. I hack together things that work, and that's kind of my thing. But I have a company, that has lots of developers that develop code. And it's funny because I'll send them my stuff. I'm like, hey, here's a prototype of something cool that does this or whatever. And I'll send it to them. They're like, yeah, we rewrote the whole thing and it's now incorporated in a formal way, right? So the whole thing is completely rewritten, because I don't do things the right way.
We took your idea and we rewrote it.
Exactly. Like my code figured
out what you wanted.
It's like try accept, and a couple functions, and there you go, you're done, right? But it works. It works great. But it's not programmer ready, so. Yeah.
And they're using Jenkins for the CI/CD, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. This is why I never let Jason see the code that I write for the Derby, because he'll probably vomit or something.
Hey,
I probably spend more time when I do write code. I spend more time doing everything I can to make sure the code is like structured properly and I'm doing things the right way. So something that could be coded and put together in 15, 20 minutes will take me a couple hours.
Yeah.
Just because I have this thing where I just want to make it right. To that effect, so the second year of DerbyCon. So the first year of DerbyCon, I watched a Blue Team talk by Safety Net. I forget exactly who it was, but
McDouglas.
Yeah, McDouglas. Right. Yeah. So it was about baselining. Yeah. And why aren't you baselining your systems? And then the second year at DerbyCon, I gave a talk about baselining.
Yeah.
I put together like, this is what I want to build. Terrified to stand in front of everybody to do this talk because
this is before you guys had stable talks.
Yeah,
it should have been a stable talk.
It should have been a stable talk. This was like, yeah, I've got this. It's down. I practiced it. It's an hour long. I did it in 20 minutes. And,
Of course.
So the code has actually since been written and it's out there.
That's awesome.
But it's the same idea. Like they threw the code together. I'd love to get more eyes on it, but automated baseline scanner, distributed the whole 9 yards. And it's neat because I think I've got my company's gonna start using it shortly, which is awesome. Fun.
That's great.
And I'm gonna do the same thing.
Congrats.
Like, dear good developers, here's this thing I wrote.
Yeah.
When you're done laughing, we'd like to make it better.
Exactly right. Yeah. Obviously you're going to get the code purists and things like that, but kudos to you for going up and speaking and doing it. That's the biggest thing. Like people are always like, oh, I'm trying to release my code because I'm afraid that, I'm not good enough where people are going to, who cares? Like if it works, it works. Who gives a crap about, what the functionality is or you didn't use, specific ways of doing things. It doesn't matter. It's like speaking a language. Like you have different ways of saying different things and ways of doing different, it's no difference. That's kudos to you on taking that step and doing it. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I'm waiting for somebody to find the first exploit in my code that looks for exploits.
I'm a security guy, and a guy at DerbyCon this year, Spence, found a bug in set that allows you to do directory traversal. So I'm like, son of a biscuit, I'm a security guy and I got this, So
yeah, and then you turned around and said, yeah, but my code was on Mr. Robot, so whatever.
Yeah.
Right. He actually pulled up. He submitted a pull request and fixed it. I was like, thanks, man. That's really awesome of him. So
That's cool.
good find. Yeah.
That's really the power of the open source community. You know, people can do that sort of thing.
Yep.
I always get afraid. I always get afraid
code.
of people who won't release their code because it's like, well, what are you hiding?
Yeah. Please break my code. I appreciate it. You know, I find issues, find ways to get around it. That's what we're looking for. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we should probably wrap up the episode tonight. I've got some kids to get to bed.
I'm going to go put some kids to bed as well. I don't know if you can hear them screaming out there, but
yeah. I was just waiting for one of them to walk into the room here and say, "Are we going to bed yet?"
You know, I'm trying to go, get out of here.
Yeah. So Dave, a big thank you for coming on the show. It's been
thanks so much for having me, guys. Really appreciate it. And hope you know, from the audience, if you ever have any questions, I'm Hacking Dave on Twitter. Happy to answer them. You know, I'm always trying to help out folks. So let me know. Yeah,
you'll see him on Fox News and CNN every once in a while talking about his buddy Trevor.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, right.
Milkshake.
Right.
And I'm about to go enjoy a milkshake. So.
Well, I mean, it's been a while. It's probably melted by now.
It could be just like a milky strawberry.
At this point, it's just strawberry milk.
Goodness,
thick, really thick strawberry milk. Yeah. All right,
so definitely appreciate you having you on.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Yep. Bye.
Night, Dave.
And poof, we lost Dave again.
He's out. This time it was intentional.
Yeah. So we had chatted about doing news after this, and I think we failed miserably in the getting news together. Said, I put a couple of links into the show notes, which you'll make appear with the stuff.
Yep.
So some quick fun stuff. If you go to TrustedSec and you look at their team members, roll over the photos. That's all I'm gonna say. Roll over the photos. You'll thank me later.
I'll have to go visit them.
We talked about time-based security. So there's a guy, Win Shortow, who he used to own a company called the name is escaping me. It says Security Awareness Company, SAC. So he owned this company called Security Awareness Company, and what they did was they would do, well, it was a security awareness training type setup.
Really?
But their claim to, and they still exist, but they're owned by KnowBe4 now. And their claim to fame is that they would create custom content for you. So if you wanted security awareness training, they would create custom security awareness content for you.
Yeah, I want to say they had a booth at Derby two or 3 years ago.
Yeah, they have a booth at Derby. They had a booth at Derby this year as well. And so the other claim to fame of Win Shortow is, if you've ever been to DEF CON or seen the DEF CON stuff, Hacker Jeopardy, he's the guy that hosts Hacker Jeopardy for years and years and years, apparently.
Oh, good. Okay.
So he wrote a book called Time-Based Security that I happened to get a copy of while I was at DerbyCon, which is pretty slick. Like many technical books, it's not the most engaging read. If that's not your bent, but it's really, really good at explaining what time-based security, what the idea is. I mean, at its core, it's how fast can you detect the guy that broke into your network? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. But there's a bunch of techniques in there and some other good stuff. So that's worth taking a look at. And then the other link that I found was so Jumpship, one of our friends from LV Hackers, posted a link about 10 things InfoSec professionals need to know about networking. Networking is one of the, I would say it's like the redheaded stepchild of InfoSec, and even of basic systems in general. So I know this is a Sysadmin podcast, and we don't generally talk on the networking end of things, but I find that I mean, we've worked together for a while. I was on the networking side, you were on the Sysadmin side.
Yep.
And I think you would agree, having at least a decent understanding of how the network works and
absolutely
some general networking attacks that can happen is very helpful when it comes to dealing with Sysadmin stuff.
Yeah, we touched on this in one of our early episodes where we talked about a good skill set for sysadmins to have. Networking is definitely a good base, even if you're not at the network admin or network engineer level. Just having a good grasp of networking is great.
Right. So this clearly this is a top-notch article. It starts out with a tweet from Hacks for Pancakes.
Obviously.
If that doesn't tell you that's the top of the list there, that's right there. But it goes over things like OSI model and routers and switches and what frames and packets are, how to get around MAC addresses and IP addresses and that sort of stuff. So it's definitely worth going through. It's a moderately sized article, but there is a ton of really, really good information in here. And I'll put it this way: if you don't understand the last two words in this article, you need to learn networking.
I'll be sure to look at it and see if I understand the last two words.
Right.
This is my Linux test.
yeah, but you'll definitely get it. But I'm sure a lot of people are not going to quite understand what that means.
Well, I'll be happy to include it in the show notes, even though we didn't really cover it in depth. But yeah.
And news-wise, some stuff happened and some things happened, and there was some news.
Yeah. There was like an Uber thing, which I don't know if we can do it justice.
Which Uber thing was it this time?
I don't know if we can do it justice. No, this isn't reason. This is from like a week or two ago. The data breach that they tried to cover up.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure you've heard about this.
Yes.
I'll just say defensive security did it justice. It might be 3 weeks ago at this point. I don't know which episode number it is, but they covered it pretty well. And it what a crap show.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not even sure what to say. This was they basically this was essentially like paying off somebody to
that's what it felt like.
Public.
That's what it felt like. So I don't want to go too deep into it. I really do have kids to get to bed. So I think we're going to call it a night for tonight. I could go through our usual spiel, but since this show is short, whatever. You can find us on podcast places. You should watch us on YouTube. And we still do Patreon.
Yep. Oh, and so programming note, we are not going to do another episode until the first.
Yeah. It's looking like next year will be our next podcast. We had a WordPress guy lined up for the 18th. Unfortunately, he had to back out. We're going to reschedule him for probably sometime in January, as long as his scheduling works out. So I think we're gonna call it done for this year. Since you guys are getting an extra episode this week where we normally wouldn't have recorded. And I mean, it was such a great content-filled episode. How could you possibly complain? And then at that point, really, the next episode we would have had was January 1st anyway. So as long as the scheduling works out for New Year's Day, we should be recording another podcast on January 1st. So we will see you guys in the new year.
Nate and possibly myself will be on Raleigh Security next week.
Yep, on Tuesday it should be. But I'm going to,
Tuesday.
As long as it's cool with all the participants, I'm probably going to record our own copy of it and do one of these where we release a copy of it the same as, other podcasts will. It's going to be a group show. It's not just Rally. It's a number of people have been invited.
Yeah. End of year, Rally, break, bunch of different podcasts.
Yeah, so it should be fun. So that'll be some more content for you folks. I have no idea how it's going to turn out.
We'll see. All right.
It may just be a bunch of podcasters yelling. I don't know. All right, so I guess that's it. I guess we will see you guys in the new year. And for those of you who celebrate it, Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, whatever your seasonal greeting of choice is. Good night, everybody.